Back on the SportsMax Zone, or voice note question for or interactive segment coming up later on. How confident are you that the West Indies will win the first test against the Sri Lankans? Send us your voice note and that will be played later in the show on this Tuesday. We're back now to talk some football. The Reggae Boys are in Austria for Thursday's friendly international against the United States. But the pre-match preparations have been disrupted by news that two members of the travelling party have tested positive for COVID-19. The Jamaica Football Federation says the positive tests were confirmed when the players landed in Germany on Monday en route to Austria. Reggae Boys team manager Roy Simpson says both players have been retested with the results pending. And we are hearing that the positive test that had come back it may not be positive after all. Confirmation awaits from the JFF.
And that's the thing about this COVID-19.
Just before you go, Mariah, run that again, Whitaker. You said the positive test may not be positive after all. What do you mean? Tidy that up first.
I'm just saying that they were retested and there are reports that they now have negative tests. The two who had tested positive before.
So there's a line between both things.
Yes.
So there were positive tests first, then they tested again and tested negative.
Yes. That's the story we are getting.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were engaging in some new science. There you go.
So I was going to say that, that's the thing about this COVID-19 situation. There's nothing set in stone. You can be positive today and be negative tomorrow. And, it's just such a fluid situation. I just hope, because I don't know how they're going to handle it, because, in different sporting bodies, sometimes if you have two negative tests after, and Lance, you mentioned that this morning, if you have two negative tests after, you're fine and you can go ahead. So I don't know how the GFF will handle this, as if, the players will be cleared if they produce another negative test.
Yeah, which is why standard procedure has been since this COVID-19 pandemic that to be completely cleared, you've got to have back-to-back negative tests.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's a massive worry, especially because this is not days of old when players were in a dormitory-like situation and multiple guys in one room or anything like that. These guys have their own room, so someone feeling symptoms or someone ill can be isolated, and the protocols that they have to go through, no sharing of items, let's call it that, is allowed among the players based on my understanding. So even if you have positive results initially, you can keep those away from the main body of the squad or from the contingent. So, in these times, a positive case it's not what it was, it's not what it would have been the reaction 12 months ago when, oh my gosh, there's a positive case, what do we do? These protocols have been set down because it has happened so many times within football teams at club level and at the international level as well. So there is enough evidence to guide the JFF in how to proceed at this point. It's good though, Lance, based on what you said just now, that those men reported positive 24 hours ago have now returned negative tests and they can go forward, and that there won't be a severe disruption to the team, because guess what? This is a team that would have been, that I'm predicting, well, it's not even a prediction because it will happen. There will be a disjointed performance on the field because this team would never have played togetver. Never have played a football game together.
That's similar to what happened to Soca Warriors, remember? When we recently
played the USA and
it
wasn't right. But even so, the bulk of those Trinidad players trained together. These Jamaican guys are only going to train in Austria, on Austrian soil. And can you imagine the extra precaution that has to be taken, given that you had positive results reported, even though new test results have come back negative? So it will be a disjointed affair, and this cannot have helped Theodore Whitmore's chances of trying to speak and motivate and get some coherence on the field.
And the other thing, just to strengthen the point that you're making, George, about disjointed going into the fixture, is if you take your mind back to last year when they were in Saudi Arabia for a 2-match series, it was a similar build-up going into the opening game, which they lost. And then 3 days after, they had the return game and won.
Yeah.
So it's a case of going into the match disjointed against Saudi Arabia, and similar situation where there were a couple of players in the setup testing positive COVID-19 and looking disjointed for the first match,
game,
but then you're settling down and looking better in the second.
But can I make it even more stark, though, to say that similar to the TT example that Mariah trumped for, the Saudi Arabia friendlies in November last year, there was a core of players who were training at the Horace Burrell facility at the UWI. So at least a segment of the broad group had some familiarity with each other. These guys are going to be perfect strangers almost, because there are so many guys who are going to be part of this setup for the first time, and there wasn't a local contingent here in training given the COVID-19 protocols that are in effect. So Mr. Whitmore's problems are going to be even more compounded, and that disjointed approach that we saw, our performance that we saw in that first game in Saudi Arabia, is likely, I fear, to be exacerbated in this Austria game against a US team that probably wouldn't have those concerns that Theodore Whitmore is bothered with at this time.
Yeah. Exactly, and what I find is, players that come from these international, like from England and whatnot, they are accustomed to a certain type of structure and all these different things. So when they have to fit into a different system, it's very uncomfortable. Remember the issue with Ravel Morrison, just a simple thing as a flight, and of course upsetting the player and whatnot. So I just keep my fingers crossed and hope like nothing of this sort happens to the players, and of course, they can give their best performance on the day.
Well, let's hear from one of the new players in the Jamaican setup, Liam Moore. He plays for the English club Reading, and here is this interview with him coming from JFF Media.
Well, I qualify through my father and my grandparents. It's been a process now for over probably 14, 15 months, just sorting out my documentation, a couple of trips to and from the embassy. But obviously with COVID as well, it slowed down the process, but I finally got my passport in hand, and I'm ready to play and hopefully ready to help the country. A friend of mine, somebody I played with, Wes Morgan, obviously he's got a lot of caps for the Reggae Boys. He was contacted, asked if it would be any interest for myself, and from then on it's just been a case of getting all the documentation together, going through the process, and thankfully I'm here now. I'm a centre-back. I'm a player that loves to defend. I think in the game now it's a dying art. Not too many people like doing it, but I love to defend. I think the most important thing is to do whatever you can to keep the ball out the back of the net. And then as the game's developed over the years now, it's important that we start attacks, we build from the back, and with some of my experiences with the managers I've played under over the years, that's helped, and I hope to bring that to the Reggae Boys. Obviously the food, the culture, and the purpose. I grew up very close to my nana, and she brings positivity, energy, a togetherness, and these are all the things that stand the Reggae Boys aside to other people. I think if we can bring that into camp, into football, we've got a great chance of succeeding and getting to where we want to be in a year's time. I know it's been too long since I've been at a World Cup, and on past players, obviously being at Reading, you've got an ex-Reading legend and a Reggae Boy legend, Jeremy McAnuff. Not quite ex-player, but somebody that's still here, very alive and kicking in Maps, another Reading player. Heck, Big Heck, he was at Reading as well, so there's a strong link between Reading and Jamaica. But for me, obviously, the main one would be Wes Morgan. I played alongside him for 4 or 5 years. Learned a lot from the big man, and yeah, he did great things for Jamaica. And I'm hoping to bring some of that experience and to continue on a journey like those boys have been on for many years. It's a process. We're all as players very, very aware of what our common goal is. I think we have to speak it, to believe it, and that's the World Cup. It's been a long time, it's been too long, but if we can gel as quickly as possible, then there's absolutely no reason we can't get there and make the country proud again.
Liam Moore there plays for Reading FC in England and set to make his debut for the Reggae Boys against Austria on Thursday. George and Mariah, heavily Europe-based squad representing Jamaica here, with good reason, because none of the local base players are match sharp, having not played any local Premier League football since March of last year. And a heavy part of the Jamaican setup in recent years have been players based in the USA, and the USA season is currently off. So I guess it's logical that most of the players in this current setup going to this USA International would be England-based players who are pretty active.
Definitely, Lance, and I like the part of being active. Liam Moore said it in the ending of his interview that the key would be how quickly they can gel together, and of course once they get through that phase, I think Jamaica looks extremely strong favourites where the Caribbean is concerned, if I might even say so.
For those who don't know his background, Leicester City Youth, a team player, spent time at Brentford on loan, spent time at Bradford on loan, spent time at Bristol City on loan after coming through the Leicester Youth Academy, and now permanently at Reading, a centre-half all the way through. So he is a strong member, a strong player in the back line. What is true is that unlike a club coach who would have difficulties with players coming to him from different parts, an international coach is comforted by the fact that most of those who come to him would at least speak the common language. In Theodore Whitmore's case, there's no Spanish or French speaker in the team for him to have to hope for someone to translate to them what the team's ethos and expectations are. Everybody speaks English, so that's a plus amid a very difficult set of circumstances that he's confronted with as he tries to whip a decent international football team together.
Yeah, and a flurry of CARICOM teams will be in action in CONCACAF World Cup qualifying over the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. Trinidad and Tobago among them, 8-time Caribbean champions TNT, and they've got Aubrey David in their setup. After the break.